Welcome to Real Bass Lessons. I'm here with my student and good friend, Charles Berthoud, and Charles is going to teach us, demonstrate for us some of his tapping today. Glad you're here. Thanks.
Yeah, thanks for having me.
Charles has been, you tell us, how long you been playing the bass?
I've been playing for about 12 years now.
Excellent. And how long you been working on tapping?
I've been working hard on tapping for about 3 years.
That's cool. Now understand, when he says working hard on tapping, we're talking about overall, how many hours a day you say you practice tapping?
Average over the last 3 years, it's been about 2 hours.
Good.
Yeah.
Earlier on, obviously, it was more, agreed?
Yeah.
When you were working on just like scales and arpeggios tapping, how much you figure you did?
Then it was probably more like 3 hours a day.
Good. Give me an example of like tapping scales, okay?
Yeah. So I started off doing it really slowly, like.
And here you're just mirroring in the hands, aren't you?
Yeah. Yes.
Excellent. Now, how can I say this? Let me get this right. There's a lot of people who do a lot of tapping, and I can tap a little bit. But what my expertise is as a teacher, I figure out what we need to work on to build a solid fundamental technique. And Charles has done that, which is totally cool. So when I started teaching tapping, which was to my son Grant and a few other guys before I met Charles, by the time I met Charles, we had it happening, totally our technical, our teaching version of it. We just, what one of the things is always to break it down to as simple and fundamental stuff as possible. And start with a scale as a way to do it. And we simply mirror this. The first thing I think I told you to do was to pick up Grant's book called Tapestry. Is that right?
Yeah.
Yeah. And that lays out and shows you fingerings for this and shows you hand position. We're not going to get into a lot of the actual mechanics of it here today, but I want to give you a little sample of it. Do that a little faster and say around the cycle of fourths, okay?
Sure.
So we're in C. F. Cool. That's outstanding. Now, when I said we're not going to get into the actual mechanics of how to do it, we're just going to demonstrate. One of the reasons is because it takes a lot more time to actually see the mechanics. But Charles is going to be doing some teaching on his own Patreon site, right?
Yeah.
You bet. Some of the rewards for the people are his patrons. And he's going to show some actual physical mechanics of how to hold the hands and how to work. Obviously, you can copy these. Let's show me an arpeggio.
Sure.
Cool, now let's stop for a second. Now, if we were to do this with our fingers and not tapping, that left hand would still be exactly the same, wouldn't it?
Yeah.
And with the right hand, we're just mirroring it finger-wise, aren't we?
Yeah.
Excellent. Now, obviously, there's a lot more complicated things you've done, but this was the basic, right?
Yeah.
Cool.
Yeah.
Again, I repeat, that book Tapestry, which Charles learned out of a bunch of my other students, that's available online. And you can, you can just get it and study it and learn it and watch. There's a DVD with it, watch it over and over, and you can make that happen on your own. I know you can. Okay? Now, Charles, tell us, as you were practicing the fundamentals of this, what was the hardest part about doing it?
So it was definitely initially when I was doing the really slow scales, just the amount of strength that it requires,
You bet.
especially in the right hand.
Understand, the slower, the more you have to hold it down, huh?
Yeah, yeah. Sustaining it is much more difficult than just tapping it and letting go.
And I remember watching Charles, go from he couldn't do it to he's kind of doing it to it sounds good to it sounds freaking beautiful. And at that point, we moved from technical scales and arpeggios into still technique practice, but we started doing the 12 keys etudes, didn't we?
Yeah.
That's from the 12 Keys to Success book. And Charles just, oh man, that's where he just, woo, took off, because now it sounded fun. It sounded musical.
Yeah.
And he mastered a whole bunch of those. And then I said, Charles, these sound so freaking great. It's time to start writing your own songs. That resulted in a book we did together called Two-Hand Tapping.
Yep.
Why don't you tell them a little bit about that, what you did for it and all that kind of stuff?
Yeah, so I wrote about 15 pieces for that book. And each one of them, I was actually sort of writing them with the goal of developing my own tapping technique.
Exactly.
So, like one of them, I would have a lot going on in the right hand, not so much in the left hand. And then I would do one where it's the opposite, so you could develop your left hand skill. And I think that actually ended up being a very effective way to sort of create tapping pedagogy.
Agreed. And I think the coolest thing about that book is everything in there was written with bass in hand for tapping.
Yeah.
Many guys that I see work on tapping, they don't have material, and they just take songs, and sometimes it sounds cool, sometimes it doesn't, but often it doesn't really develop technique. And Charles has mastered the physical tapping technique on this instrument. Today, he does endless cool stuff. If you haven't seen his YouTube and Patreon videos, do it. Charles Berthoud. I'll put up a little link so you can go to it. Cool. So you did the tapestry book. Then we studied all the etudes and practiced those. How long did you practice that before we ever really started writing them? Maybe
It was at least a few months, I think.
I think so too.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Maybe.
I would think, maybe even closer to a year, really, before you started writing the two-handed tapping etudes, wasn't it?
Maybe, yeah.
Yeah, I think so. What about the musicality of it? Some people go, oh, it's just sort of clickety-clack and it's kind of noisy. Tell us what you've thought or what you've done or what you've practiced for that to make it sound pretty.
So initially, I really just had to focus on the technique. I couldn't really think too much about dynamics and things like that. But then eventually, I sort of was able to not focus so much on the technique and just focus really on things individually. Like recently I've been focusing more on dynamics, and I'll practice a piece and just think about the dynamics and sort of isolating each area of music.
And I thought of something I remember when we went through a stage too, isolating each hand.
Right.
Can I play louder here and softer here, or vice versa?
Yeah.
Not just both, everything does the same thing.
Yeah.
That's one of the challenges. When you first start doing two-hand, you want to do everything the same.
Yeah.
The trick is getting stuff to do it separately.
Yeah.
I often talk to Charles. I often say, man, that's like your piano study. He studied a lot of classical piano when he was younger.
Yeah.
Sure, you learn independence besides once you get the fingers down.
Yeah.
Cool. What about a number of the songs you've written that are sort of like pop tunes? Tell us a little bit, maybe a couple of those songs and what you've done with them.
So yeah, especially the piccolo-based tunes.
Cool.
A couple of those first ones I wrote, like there's one I have called Resurrection, which definitely sounds like a sort of almost like a pop guitar riff with simple melodies in between.
Cool. We did a couple of duo videos too, which again, I'll put links up to all this stuff. Name the two tunes we did, I forget.
One of them's I Wanna Be.
Yes.
And the other one is One Winter Night.
Yeah, and it was killer because he's doing beautiful stuff, and my job is just sort of stay out of the way, but yet play pretty melodies.
Yeah.
On one, I just sort of get the bottom end and stay out of the way, but it sounds so nice. What it does is it allows him to sort of shine, so he didn't try to have to keep both things going at once.
Right.
Because that's sometimes the trick with two-handed tapping. You're doing the harmony, you're doing the melody, and then a harmony, and then rhythm, and a bass line. So if you're not careful, it's all just, all the time. Oh, come on, let's back off and make it sound pretty.
Yeah.
Very cool. How about you do a demonstration and play one of your earlier ones, that D minor 1. This is one that we've taught a bunch of students, and everybody loves it. Can you play that for us?
Yeah, sure.
Please. That's outstanding. I noticed a number of the things right in that we talked about. He had some unison stuff going on, and then you had a line and a harmony to it, so it's a different fingering. And then you had a sustain with some moving lines. Then you had a sustain with some moving lines, and then you had some nice dynamics sort of creeping there. That's totally cool. If you really want to see, and I recommend you do, some of the performance of Charles's stuff, would it be probably your YouTube channel would be best?
Yeah.
What's the name of your YouTube channel?
You can just type in my name, Charles Berthoud.
Good.
And that's the name of my channel.
The book, Two-Handed Tapping, comes with a DVD that has every one of the songs in there, video of him doing it, and it's impressive. Sometimes those are a little too hard to start with, but boy, they're fun to watch and get inspiration from. And I'm not suggesting you can't do it. You're just going to have to work at it a whole bunch.
Yeah.
It's really cool, though. Hey, let's take not a break, but let's shift here, and I'm going to get my bass, and let's play one of mine from that book, okay?
Okay, sure.
Good, let's go to that video now. So here's that song called Open Up. Take it away, Charles. That's pretty darn cool, man. Nice job. Thanks a million for doing this. I appreciate it.
Cool.
I want to repeat that check out Charles's stuff online. He's going to be teaching some very specific lessons on just some really fundamental tapping stuff. And man, this is cool. You know, some people say to me and ask, hey, Jim, do I need to learn how to tap the bass? No, you don't. Just like electric bass students have asked me forever, hey, Jim, do I really have to learn to play the double bass? No, you don't. But the truth is if you just love the sound of it, well, why wouldn't you? The only trick is you got to learn to do it well, so it sounds nice. Yeah, I know guys who tap and it doesn't sound very cool. And I know guys who are tapping in the middle of a jazz tune, and that probably doesn't make everybody happy either. But the style of playing is beautiful. And I encourage you just to get into it. I know that it got Charles going. And by the way, just in case anybody wonders, well, yeah, but can the guy play with his fingers? Oh, yeah. Charles learned all the fundamental stuff before he ever got to tapping. So it's a valid technique. It's a beautiful sound. It's great for all playing, but particularly for solo stuff. And this young man has really proven it. I appreciate it.
Thanks
Good
for
on
having
you.
me.
Oh, you're welcome. You're welcome. Fire it up.